Hello again. I'm David Halbrook coming to you from Fairbanks, Alaska to share a few words of truth and reason. And though you can't tell it from the sky behind me, it's midnight. We're right in the middle of the midnight sun. In the previous video, we looked at the resurrection of Jesus and the evidence that comes from the Old Testament, the evidence for his resurrection that was recorded before his resurrection. But now I want you to think about the evidence that comes from the time of Christ, and that is from first, those who were eyewitnesses during his life and the time of his resurrection, Matthew and John. John writes in John chapter 21 and verse 24, "This is the disciple who testifies of these things and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true." And how do you know that his testimony is true? By investigating it. In fact, why did Matthew and John believe that Jesus had been raised and tell people and record those beliefs? Did they do that in an effort to gain fame? Well, any fame that those ideas brought them more problems than popularity, because the gospel was originally hated by the Jews and by the Romans, the two people who were primarily in power. But what their writings accomplished was to allow investigation of the things that they were teaching. John says in John chapter 20 and verse 31, "But these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." Now, not only did they record their beliefs, they wrote some very personal things. They even wrote about their own flaws. They tell of themselves and the fellow apostles that they did not believe Jesus repeatedly when he told them about his impending death and resurrection, when he taught about the kingdom. They tell about their arguments that they had among themselves in regards to a desire for power. They tell how they did not believe the women who came and reported to them the things that they had seen. Is that the way that if you were making up a story, you would talk about yourself and your friends? Well, probably not, but if you believe that you needed to tell the truth, then those are the kinds of things that you would say. Now, these two books originally spread in spite of the fact that they had no religious hierarchy, no publishing company. They did not have the backing of powerful people. In fact, they were opposed by the powerful Romans and the powerful Jews. And that's because of the evidence. The reason that their writing spread is because of the evidence. What Matthew says fits with what John says. They agree or they complement, and they do not contradict each other. So what in their writings would convince you that they're not telling the truth? Have you investigated the writings of these two eyewitnesses? We also have the record of two who were not eyewitnesses, but who spent time with eyewitnesses, and that would bring the books of Matthew and of Mark and Luke. Now, Mark was not an eyewitness, but he spent time with Peter, who was an apostle and who was an eyewitness. Peter mentions him in 1 Peter 5 and verse 13. Luke was also not an eyewitness, but he worked with Paul, who was an eyewitness, and Paul mentions him in Colossians 4 verse 14 and 2 Timothy 4 verse 11. So these two non-witnesses, when they write about the same things, they agree with each other, and they also agree with the two eyewitnesses, Matthew and John. They also agree with what was written in the Old Testament. They also agree in other areas, such as historians and archaeologists. When we learn about the culture and the places and the people of that time, it all matches with what Matthew and Mark and Luke and John tell. And it's in the next video that I want to show you how powerful all of these streams of evidence are when they converge and when they're combined. It's like these tributaries that give the world's rivers their power and their strength. The evidence within Jesus' words of truth and reason have that kind of power to compel us, to persuade us to believe that Jesus is Christ, to believe that Jesus is risen. Thanks for joining me for a few more words, and wait for the next video and join me there.